If you've got £500,000 to spend on a brand new boat, then this, the Beneteau Swift Trawler 37, might be the most bang for your buck that you can buy. It's based on the brilliant original Swift Trawler 34, a boat which my family actually used to own, so I feel like I know this model quite well already. And in this video, I want to answer a pretty simple question really. Is this still the best scaled down liveaboard you can buy? Let's find out. I'm Jack Haynes, you're watching YachtBuyer. Let's have a closer look at pricing, shall we? You can get an ST37 in base spec for around £305,000 ex-tax, but that would be somewhat lacking in creature comforts. The UK dealer handily provides a typical on-the-water spec that includes the larger engine, comfort trim, electronics pack, bow sun pads, bimini, stern thruster and radar, which is likely to come in at around £430,000 excluding VAT. A hefty jump over the base price, but still in this market, a lot of boat for the money. Later in the video, I'm going to drive and berth the ST37, but first, let's have a look on board. Okay, we're going to start the tour back here where we have a stubby little fixed bathing platform. It really is quite small, but there is space to have davits, and then you can flip a tender up and carry a dinghy sort of up against the transom like this. The Swift Trawler 34, the original, the tender lived up there, which is a bit of a faff. I'll explain about that on the Flybridge. So much simpler just to have davits down here where you can stow the tender. What else have we got? Well, there's somewhere you can drop in a nice ladder. There's also an emergency ladder because, of course, if you fall in and the ladder's not in place, you've got no way of getting out. So there is an emergency ladder down there that's always in place in case you do drop into the water when you're not supposed to. There's a shower down here as well. Cleats at lower level for springing across, and you've got these cleats up here on top too. One nice little detail is that this bench, this is it in sort of travel mode, but then when you anchor, there's a couple of pins in the deck and you can push this back and get yourself a nice bit more floor space here so you can stretch out and, crucially, put a table in here. Now, there's no option for a fixed table because underneath this deck is a huge lazarette, and I mean huge. It's really deep, goes right out to the sides of the hull. When I mentioned liveaboard in the intro, it's that sort of storage that makes that really easy to do. You can be on board with loads of kit for longer periods of time. But yeah, with this back, space for a table, space the other side for some director's chairs as well, so you can dine out here underneath the shade from the overhang. And another clever bit of design, which we've seen on other Swift trawlers, is the ladder is also pinned into the deck. You can push that right up against the glass, so again, you're getting more floor space here as well. The other thing you can do is fully enclose this area. You can see the covers are in place here. You've got screens all the way around. And Swift trawler owners, they use their boats all year round. So having this extra space, even when the weather isn't great, is very, very valuable. A couple of other things. You've got these little perches. These are fixed, but these are a very nice place just to sit here. Very nice when the boat's stationary, but also I quite like sitting here when the boat's moving along as well, watching the water pour out from behind the bathing platform. And you can see right forward too. Nice spots these, catching the sun. Really nice bit of additional seating in this area. Right, before we go up top, let's go to the foredeck. They've modernised the design quite a bit. There was a Swift Trawler 35 after the 34, and now this 37 is the latest iteration. You used to have this sort of panel here with the Beneteau logo on it. Made it look a bit more trawlery from the outside, but actually it's nice just to have this railing here where you can hang fenders more easily, but you've still got some of these nods to the old trawler design. I quite like that. Just breaks up this big black panel, and for the profile it's really quite distinctive. And this is a really key part about this design. Asymmetric decks. I'm going to talk more about how well all of this works when we go into the marina, because this is where you really see the benefit of the door and the gate, and I'll show you that when we berth it later on. It's up a couple of steps to the foredeck, but despite that, you've still got these nice railings that fall easily to hand. Look at the height on these tow rails too. You do feel nice and safe and secure. Now, this particular boat is quite a modest spec. You probably spotted that with some of the features. You know, you've got no cushions up here, there's no teak on the decks. You can have skylights in this section as well. All bits you can add, but this is a good demonstration of really how much boat you can get for your money. Really, really good value at this price point, but just not absolutely hanging with all the bells and whistles that you could spec if you wanted to. Another thing you can do is put solar panels up here. It's got a silent boats pack. Most trawlers have got this option now, but that gives you solar panels, bigger batteries, so that you can run things for sort of 8 hours overnight without starting up the generator. A generator is an option as well, of course. Right, forward here, this is the practical bit. We're anchored at the moment. So I can show you the anchor lockers. Oops. These could do with a way of holding up. That would just demonstrate it quite nicely. They've got a way of stopping them flipping back too far, but you can see it's all too easy for those to slam down. So something holding those up would be handy. Now, it's a really big locker. No issue with the size, but it is not compartmentalized. So they're 2 doors into one space. It would be more useful to have one side where you can put lines and fenders, and the other side where you can put chain. So the chain isn't going to drag ropes or fender lines up into the windlass. But access is really good, and you've got plenty of storage there for fenders, which is always handy. And of course, access to the windlass is really good because it's exposed on deck. That aside, it's quite nice and flat up here, very easy to move around. This is going to be run mainly by 2 people, so the crewing side of things is very important. I'm going to talk more about that when we head inside the marina, as I said. Right, up the Flybridge, but before we do that, make sure you subscribe. If you enjoy this type of content, hit subscribe, and the algorithm will help us out and you'll never miss one. Right, to the Flybridge. What Beneteau is very good at doing with its Swift Trawler range is listening to how owners use the boat and taking that information and improving the next one along the line. I've had 2 bites of the cherry with this range because the 34, then the 35, and now this one. And one of the biggest changes I think is up here because the 34, as I said, this had space on the Flybridge to keep the tender. You had a mast and a crane and you'd lift the tender in and out and it would sit here. Now that was a pain, especially on a rough day. However, what it did give you was lots of deck space because this deck extended a bit further back, and then when the tender was in, it was just open space. So we used to put, you know, sun loungers down there, another table, deck chairs, so you had quite a lot of space. But of course it was all freestanding furniture. Here you've got less space, but you have got more of a focus on fixed furniture, which is nice, and it sits beneath an optional bimini, which you'll need if you want to sit up here really, because it provides some lovely shade. No hardtop option, of course. There isn't any cooking facilities up here, so you are going to be passing food up and down from the deck below, but seating is really pretty good. This is a 2-way backrest, so at the moment that's in travel mode, but the backrest flips that way, so it can become part of the dinette. And like downstairs, you could just about squeeze a couple of director's chairs in here to sit more people around the table, but also the Helm suite swivel, so that will turn and face this corner, so this can also be part of the dining party. So it doesn't feel as big a space as certainly the 34, but it's probably a bit more functional, certainly in terms of living space. The Helm, we're going to cover all of that when we drive it in a moment. Before we do that, let's go and have a look at the interior. Remember, if you want to compare this to the previous generations and its rivals, you can do that on YachtBuyer.com. Head over there, you can compare it side by side with other boats in the sector and previous models, look at the layout plans, photos, tech specs, and see how they all compare. It's really handy. And this is another space where the layout has changed quite a lot from the original, because the galley used to be here in a U shape, but again, feedback from owners was it means that no one can sit next to the helm. So the galley is now over here. Not quite as good when you're at sea because you'd really wedge yourself in that U-shaped galley, but it is a bigger space, much more modern in look and feel as well. And not massive countertop, but quite practical because you've got the 2-burner gas hob in the middle. A nice bit of prep area here, which is all fiddled, so you can leave stuff there and be assured it's not going to slide around all over the place. The sink is here, and there's just space aft to put that, though it would be handy if that was a chopping board on the underside, which you sometimes see on other boats. Fridge space is here. Not vast. That is one place where you're a little bit lacking. That is your only fridge on board. So if there's an option to put a fridge elsewhere, be that in the cockpit or upstairs, I would definitely go for it. TV is up here. It's going to be pretty small. This boat hasn't got it fitted, though I'm not surprised. It's not really an option that you're likely to use. Better just to probably rely on your tablet if you want to watch a film or something. Now opposite we have the dinette, and that's, you know, well positioned here. It's nice and spacious, and also you've got big windows. Obviously bit restricted over this side because you've got the storage at the top of the galley, but this is a nice big piece of glass, and you've got the big side window, so natural light is pretty good, and it's a bright decor in here too. Now as an option, you can see this track here. You can put a curtain here and convert this into an occasional double berth, and when we go down to the accommodation, I think I'll explain then why I think that's a good option for you to have. Engine is underneath here. We're going to look at that at the end of the tour, and then we have this area that really is quite new because, as I said, this used to be galley and now it's seating space, and I have to say I think it's a really good addition because if you are traveling down here, this is a really nice place to be, especially if you're someone who feels a bit seasick maybe because you're looking forward, you've got some fresh air, you can see the horizon, plenty of space for 2 people here, and it means that the skipper isn't sitting in splendid isolation over there on their own. The other thing is, it doesn't flip or anything like that, but because of its position, if you are all sitting inside, this becomes another place where someone can sit, even if the boat's stationary. So yeah, the dinette's full. This is actually a pretty nice place to come and relax. And you've got great views out those big windows over on that side. The other thing they've done, aside from this little shelf, which is quite handy because, again, it's fiddled so you can put stuff on there and things aren't going to slide off. There's sockets in there too so you can charge your devices. They've also added this. So you've got a table, a desk, call it what you want, but just a nice flat area. Chart work maybe, but again, you can put your iPad, laptop there. Really, really handy extra bit of flat space around the helm because, of course, the helm itself hasn't really got anywhere to do paperwork. So that's very useful. The helm we're going to cover out at sea. Before we do that, let's look at the cabins. It's a pretty simple arrangement down here on the lower deck, and it hasn't changed much at all from the previous generation. So that means you've got an owner's cabin forward, a double there. There's a bunk cabin here on the port side, and your bathroom, which is shared, is over here on the starboard side. And I'll explain a bit more about why you might want the convertible berth in the saloon. And that's because this really is best suited to kids. So if you're going to have adults on board regularly, this works much better as a dressing room or somewhere where people can stow their bags, and then you can convert the berth to create a much more comfortable double bed. Yes, it's up there in the saloon and they're going to be there in the morning when you get up, but it's going to make for a much more comfortable night than stuffing adults into these bunks, which really aren't very big at all. There's a bit of storage in there, and they've got a couple of portholes. Headroom's okay when you first go into the cabin, but the bunks are pretty tight. Opposite the bathroom, that's pretty good. Headroom's great in there. Separate shower cubicle as well, so you're not going to get everything soaked when you have a shower, and it's finished pretty nicely. Lovely and bright in there as well. And for the owner, well, it only does pretty well. Right forward here, obviously it's quite a bit more space. Nice big double bed. There's hanging lockers on both sides, but the storage continues because you can very easily flip up the bed and you've got bag or shoe storage here. That's really handy and nice. You don't have to lift up the mattress or anything like that to get to it. You literally pull up the end of the bed and it's very easy to get to. Much brighter in here than the previous generations as well. Those boats have the little round ports that you can see and nothing else. This has now got big hull windows, as we expect on a modern boat like this, but the opening ports too. So with the sky hatch, you have got a decent amount of ventilation into this area, and there's enough space at the end of the bed to sit up if you want to read or scroll through your phone. Should also mention that there is direct access into the bathroom from this cabin, so there's a door behind this door, so there is ensuite access. That aside, that's about the long and short of it when it comes to accommodation. Let's fire up and see what you can do out in the water. Right, let's start from up here on the Flybridge, because this is the sort of the day where you'll be glad you've got a Flybridge boat. Let's ease her up. We're doing 5 knots now. So let's get up to cruising speed. It's not electric out the hole, which probably isn't much of a surprise. But it gallops up to cruising speed relatively quickly. It is a Swift Trawler after all. And there we are, about 15, 16 knots. That's where you're going to be cruising. It's a semi-displacement hull, so it's not skimming over the top of the surface, nor is it pushing through like a displacement hull. It's doing a little bit of both. But yeah, 15 knots is really where you're going to be cruising. Of course, you can bimble along at sub 10 knots very nicely on a boat like this. If you want to get a move on, then this is the sort of speed you're going to be at. And it's worth pointing out there are 2 engine options. There's a 400 horsepower Yanmar, which this boat's got, or there's a 440 horsepower Yanmar, which is £10,000 on top, so you're paying 10 grand for another 40 horsepower. Hard to know whether it's worth it really. Whatever you do, you're still going to cruise at this speed, I'd imagine. You might get over 20 knots top speed with the bigger engine. This one's topping out at maybe 18, 19. So if you do want to be able to, you know, top out in the early 20s, the 440s for you. Otherwise, save yourself 10 grand, and I think the 400 works pretty well, to be honest, because as I said, no matter which engine you choose, this is going to be your cruising speed. And it's nice up here. You know, this is not a huge boat, but it feels very commanding. You've got a nice broad bow. You can see it pushing the waves aside. It's not so choppy now when we're filming, but earlier on it kicked up a fair bit, white horses and maybe a 1.5 foot, 2 foot chop, and it really does barrel through it very nicely. It's a little bit agricultural, especially in a quartering sea. It will roll around a bit. That is part of the semi-displacement hull, single engine. It's not stabilised. You're going to have that type of movement. But it does feel capable, and it feels safe, and it feels like it will get you through it, but it does roll around a little bit. In a head sea, shoves through it really nicely, even if there is a fair bit of spray chucked on board by the wind at times. But it's a really dependable hull shape. And I like this driving position. It's not sporty, you're not plugged in, but considering the type of boat it is, it's very comfortable. I can sit back and I'm still in touch with everything. It tracks nicely at this speed, wanders around a little bit sub 6 knots, you're having to adjust the wheel a lot, but here that keel gives it a nice amount of dynamic stability, and we're sticking in a straight line here. As you can see, I'm not touching the wheel at all. It's a pretty simple but effective helm. It's not flash, it's not particularly cool, but it's got all of your essentials. You've got a little MFD in front of you with the majority of your information. I like that they've built this section down here by my knee, which just brings the throttles a little bit closer. This boat's got the zip wake trim system as well. That's got auto trim, so that's just handling the trim. I'm not having to think about that. With the controllers right there, comes closer to me, which is good. Storage is okay as well. The cup holders are big enough to store items that are bigger than cups. You've got this little section here, and then underneath the seat there's a perfect spot for the covers for your screens, and there's another hatch down there where you can put covers for the dash. So yeah, pretty practical. And the bimini, we're into the wind now. We're pulling, 15 knots. There's probably another 10 knots of wind, and it feels rock solid. There's no flapping, no whistling, so you can easily travel with the bimini in place on a really hot day. It's nice that you can travel with the shade, and it's nice and high as well. When I stand up, I don't feel like I'm going to crack my head on the bimini. See, this feels like a really nice bonus area. European builders, there are very few brands building Flybridges this small anymore, so this is a bit of a novelty. Let's see what it's like downstairs. But down here at the lower helm, this really hasn't changed that much over the last 2 generations, and to me that is a good thing. I spent many hours on our Swift Trawler 34 standing in this position. It's really comfortable. You've got a fantastic view, and the dash, again back upstairs, it's not flashy, but it's so functional. Everything works, it's close, it's easy to read everything. They've got nice big buttons so you can quickly hit the thing you need to hit without thinking twice or delving through a digital menu. This particular boat's got a smaller MFD. I probably spec the larger one. As you've only got one, I feel like having a bigger screen is going to be a benefit, because then you can split the information much more easily. But yeah, it's a simple arrangement that just works really well. And then what they have done, however, is bring this seat a little bit closer to the helm, so when you sit, you can sit back and still reach everything. That wasn't the case before. And this again is another really comfortable driving position. Again, we're at sort of 6 knots here, so we'll open her up now. Much less wind down here, obviously, much less wind noise, but this is where you get the engine noise. On a shaft drive boat of this size, unless you go V drive, there is no avoiding the fact that the engine is just there, and you know about it. I mean, noise levels are at cruising speed around 90 decibels, which is pretty high, and you have to raise your voice even talking to somebody who's just there. So communicating with the people in the dinette, you have to speak quite loudly, and that will get tiresome after a while. But she barrels along very nicely. And the nice thing about this arrangement is that, funny enough, the weather is just turning here. It's got a little bit cold, there might be some rain coming in. You drop down and you've got an equally nice driving position down here. Yes, you're inside, but there's so much glass here, so much headroom. It's bright. It feels like a helm that you would actually want to use, especially when you go into the marina when well, we'll come on to that in a moment, won't we? But yeah, at 15 knots here, the only thing taking a bit the edge off this experience is how much you can hear the engine. So they can improve insulation underneath that floor. That would be a real benefit on longer passages. The handling, well, it actually reacts really nicely to the wheel, but it doesn't heel like a planing boat. It's a very flat turn, an obedient, quite sharp turn, but it's flat, so there's no real sense of the boat heeling or leaning. But actually, it reacts nicely and positively from this lovely big wheel. Obviously, this is much bigger than upstairs. The steering's a little bit lighter down here. It's a bit hard work through the hands up the Flybridge, but actually this big wheel is relatively light as you go from lock to lock, and yeah, she behaves nicely, but it's actually a hole where it's best to just let the hull do its thing. As I've said, when you get caught in a quartering to sea, the temptation is to try and steer your way out of it. It's actually better just to let the hull and the zip wake system do the work. Do less inputs from the wheel and just let the boat find the neatest way through the waves. Now, the other big thing about this driving position is the side door. Now, I've talked about how good that is when you're crewing, when you're moving around the boat. But what's lovely is that it's really big, but you can't just have it open ajar like this. So I'm getting a nice bit of breeze in here without it being wide open. Even if there's a bit of spray flying around, you can still have this open and you're not going to get soaked. I like that. I like that you've got an opening window on the other side as well. So, you know, it's a small boat. It's got a lot of glass. It could get warm. Having all these ventilation options is really, really important. I should point out we've got the aft doors closed at the moment, and of course, you know, there's a lot of fiberglass here, so it does act as a bit of an echo chamber, possibly why it does feel quite loud in here. But no complaints about the performance with this 400 horsepower Yanmar. You know, the original Swift Trawler pretty much performed in exactly the same way with a 425 horsepower Cummins. They really are designed to be in this 15 to 17 knot sweet spot. But take it down to 8 knots, and that's a really nice way to cruise on a calm day, and obviously a lot quieter and a lot better fuel. Talking of fuel, I haven't mentioned that yet, have I? So we're pulling just over 3,000 RPM at this cruising speed, 15 knots. We're against the side now, and that's 74 litres per hour. So you're looking at a range of probably a couple of 100 nautical miles, maybe a touch more than that. So not massive range, but perfectly good for hopping between ports, hopping along the coast. The odd short overnight passage will be absolutely fine, but it's not got thousands of nautical miles of range like a typical trawler. But then, you know, this is a Swift Trawler. It is a slightly different proposition. But the interesting thing about this is it's a single shaft drive, and it's actually around the marina where they can be a little bit hard work. So let's head inside the handle and see what it's like in slow speed. Now, why can a single shaft be a bit tricky? Well, the reason is you have prop walk, which means when you go astern, because of the way the prop is mounted, even if the rudder is straight, the stern will move in a certain direction. So it's especially tricky if you're trying to get the stern to move towards a pontoon, for example, and the prop walk is making it go the other way. So for that reason, it's pretty much imperative, I would say, you have a stern thruster fitted to this boat, because it's slow speed. Once the wheel and the rudder are out of the equation, it's going to be much easier to feed in the power using the throttle and then make fine adjustments using the thrusters. We've got a bow thruster as well, and it's not often that I'd say a stern thruster is pretty much a must-have, but I think on a boat like this it will just make your life so much easier. You know, this big wheel, it does take quite a lot of turning from lock to lock, so to get the rudder involved is a bit of a process. Having that control of the stern with the thruster will just make life an awful lot easier. Quite a lot of windage as well. You know, it's a short, relatively tall boat, so it does catch the wind. So for all of these reasons, having the thruster in play is going to make, you know, one of the more difficult elements of boat ownership a bit easier. Yeah, and really with bow and stern thruster, you can almost use it like a joystick, with the thruster one way, the bow thruster one way, the stern thruster the other, and you can spin it really quite quickly. And this is why this door is so good, because I can even step out and take a proper look at the pontoon, really gauge my position, and then if you're on your own, you're out the door and out the boarding gate, and it's really easy to handle the boat if you're short-handed. Obviously you're pretty much always going to want a more starboard side 2 on this boat, because you've got this deck here and you've got a great view, so that's something to bear in mind. Make sure your home berth is one way you can get starboard side 2, but it's the thrusters that really make this so much more manageable. This is why I can stand so easy at this helm position as well. You just feel really, really in control. There you go. So that's the sea trial done. Before we wrap up, let's have a look at the engine room. Right, we've heard enough of this engine. Let's have a look at it. You'll probably see why it, you know, makes itself known. It is just here underneath the deck, and actually access day to day is pretty good. because you can drop down that end and get right down into the space. Of course, there's no standing headroom, but you can at least stand where the hatch opens there. If you need even better access, you can get the table out and lift up this side too. So then you have got really good access around both sides. As it stands, this is really best for your day-to-day checks, checking your fuel levels, oil, dipstick, belts, that sort of thing. All pretty manageable. But yeah, if you want greater access, you're going to have to flip over the other side. Neat and tidy down there as well. The generator actually lives in the lazarette if you have that spec, so that's not gobbling up space down there. It's pretty good. Beneteau has been building a trawler of this size for over a decade now, and it still doesn't have any real direct rivals, which astonishes me because this feels like so much in such a contained package. It's got a great mix of deck space, accommodation on board, it's quick enough to do day trips, comfortable enough to do longer trips as well. It may have lost a little bit of its charm and certainly a bit of deck space in transitioning from the original 34 to 37 we have here, but I still think for the money, it's the best scaled down liveaboard you can buy. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching that review of the Beneteau Swift Trawler 37. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do give us a like if you did, and remember to subscribe if you've not done so already. We actually featured this boat in a video where we compared what you can buy new for £500,000 and what you can buy used. I'll put that video up there. Really quite interesting. More Swift Trawler content down here. Thanks again for watching. I'm Jack Haynes. This is YachtBuyer.